Let's do one more word with Adrian Owen, who's the Canada Excellence Research Chair in Cognitive Neuroscience and Imaging from Western University in London, Ontario. And I'm going to scare you a bit here, okay?
For sure.
Let's play a clip of when you were last here in that chair a year and a half ago.
Right.
And because we wanted to talk to you about why you decided to leave Cambridge, which is a very big, important, prestigious city, to come to London, Ontario, which is a very nice city, but it's not Cambridge. And here's what you had to say. Let's roll this, please. Maybe this is our inferiority complex, but nobody leaves the mothership for the colonies, right? And yet that's what you've done.
Well, I've come to a much better situation. You know, scientists are selfish, really. They just like to sort of get on with their research. And, you know, to do that, it requires infrastructure, it requires that you have other people around, and of course it requires funding. And this was all laid out to me in a very enthusiastic and cooperative way, and Western made the argument that I could do what I was doing in Cambridge much better at Western and take our research to the next level, and I believe I can do that.
Okay, so fast forward a year and a half.
Yep.
How prophetic have you been?
For sure, I can read minds much better than I thought. I can see that. I can see the future. That's very interesting. I think things have worked out extremely well. Actually, I think when we met last time, I was still trying to set up just the process in Western for evaluating patients, for getting patients in the scanner. All that stuff is really complicated, it's expensive, we've got to get ambulances organised and accommodation for the patients and their families. That's all running beautifully smoothly now. We have new labs. We're seeing several patients a month. Since I met you last, we've identified a patient, Scott Routley, we were talking about him, close to London, who is in many ways the most interesting patient we've ever seen. He was assumed to be in a vegetative state, and he isn't. We've rolled out a new system using something different than fMRI, electroencephalography, or EEG, which is a mobile means of detecting consciousness in some of these patients. We've purchased a Jeep, an EE-Jeep as we call it. We go out on the road and we visit patients in their care homes, in their hospitals, in their own homes in some cases, and we assess them there, which makes it much easier for us to see more patients and for us to reach patients who couldn't possibly travel to Western. So I think things are going pretty well, actually.
Now, when you were here again back in the spring of 2011, you said one of the reasons you wanted to come here, as opposed to stay back home in the UK, was that you'd get to do things here that you couldn't do back there. Has that turned out to be, in fact, the case?
For sure, yeah. I mean, we have much better imaging facilities at Western than we had available back in the UK. So some of the things that we've been able to do to explore why these patients are in the situation that they're in and some of the residual capacities that they have, we've only been able to do that with the most sophisticated imaging systems in the world, and they are available at Western. Similarly, developing the EEG technique, the mobile technique to go out on the road, that was something that had been there in the background, but it required a lot more resources, a lot more people dedicating their time to making it happen. And by freeing up time that I was spending on other things and having a dedicated lab working on this, I think we've been able to make enormous progress.
And how about just finally the difference between living in a grandly historic 1,000-plus-year-old city compared to living in London, Ontario? How's that gone?
People often say to me, well, Cambridge is such a beautiful place, you know, isn't it so terrible to have moved? But, you know, I didn't spend my life wandering through the streets of Cambridge looking at the beautiful architecture. You know, Cambridge is a fantastic place to live. It's a lovely place to visit. But those aren't the things that are important to me. You know, I want to be able to get on with my science. I want to be able to employ smart young people that have great ideas about what to do next, and I want to live in a city that's easy to live in. I spend significantly less time sitting in traffic in London, Ontario than I used to spend in Cambridge.
That's good news. You wouldn't get to do that here in Toronto, that's for sure.
No, that's true.
You'd spend a lot of time in traffic. Thanks, Dr. Owen. Great to see you again.
My pleasure. You too.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.